Chu Qing had always loved my legitimate elder sister, but in the end, he was forced to marry me. On our wedding night, he looked at me, a face somewhat resembling my sister's, and said coldly, "If it weren't for Rongyin, I might have fallen for you." From that day on, he never stepped foot in my courtyard again. It wasn't until my sister entered the palace and was later killed by the noble consort that everything changed. He found out that she had gone to the southern pastry shop to buy chestnut cakes for me, and that was when the emperor, who happened to be traveling in disguise, caught sight of her and took her into his harem. Gripping my neck, Chu Qing's eyes were filled with undisguised hatred as he spat. "It should have been you who died. How dare you live on with that face?" In my final struggle, I drove the gold hairpin from my head into his chest. When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back to that very day when I begged my sister to buy me chestnut cakes. This time, I dressed to the nines and left the estate myself. And so, it was I who entered the palace in her place. But then, Chu Qing regretted everything. Zero 1. Just as I realized I had been reborn, my elder sister Shin Rongyin called out to me. "Rong Shi, Mother asked me to go to the west side of the city to buy some fabric. Is there anything you'd like me to bring back?" I stared at her gentle smile, momentarily dazed. She was alive. I was alive. That alone was enough to make my heart swell. In my previous life, she had planned to go to a fabric shop on the west side. But I suddenly had a craving and insisted she get me chestnut cakes from the famous pastry shop in the south. She always doted on me and agreed, without hesitation. Who would have thought that would be the moment the emperor, traveling incognito, spotted her and became smitten? For a family like ours, merely minor nobility, such a thing was an immense honor. And when the imperial decree arrived, there was no choice but to obey. So the one originally betrothed to the heir of the marquis household was replaced by me. Everyone in Shengjing knew Chu Qing, the marquis's heir, handsome, talented in both civil and martial arts, and a rare young prodigy. But when I married him full of joy, I discovered that Chu Qing had long been hopelessly in love with my sister. Yet, under pressure from his family, he was forced to take me as his wife. On our wedding night, he looked at my face, so similar to hers, and said, "If it weren't for Rongyin, I might have liked you." From then on, he never set foot in my courtyard again. What I didn't expect was that my sister, after only 6 months in the palace, became the emperor's favorite, and also the target of the other concubines' jealousy. At the noble consort's birthday banquet, she was ordered to dance for the guests because she excelled at long-sleeve dance. On the high platform, she danced again and again, even though she was unwell. Eventually, she collapsed from exhaustion and fell. When I received news of her death, I rushed back to the Shin family. Along the way, I told my mother that if I hadn't insisted on the chestnut cakes, she wouldn't have met the emperor and wouldn't have died. What I didn't know was that Chu Qing overheard it. That night, when I returned home, he went mad. He grabbed me by the neck, eyes full of naked hatred. "You're the one who should have died. How do you even have the face to live?" I fought with all my strength, but he was too strong. As I hovered on the brink of death, I summoned all the strength I had left, pulled out the gold hairpin from my hair, and stabbed it into his chest. And now I'm back, right where it all began. This time, let Rongyin live a peaceful life. I'll be the one to settle all our debts. 02. Just like in my previous life, I tugged at my sister's sleeve, acting playfully. But this time, I said something different. "Then, sister, pick the prettiest fabric at the shop and have a dress made for me." She pinched my cheek affectionately and agreed. After she left, I returned to my room, dressed myself up, and left the estate, heading straight for the southern pastry shop. In my past life, she came back with Li Su. Father instantly recognized him as the emperor in disguise. He was about to kneel, but Li Su stopped him with a single look. Father held a minor position and didn't dare guess the emperor's intent. So he simply served him with utmost caution. Li Su stayed at our home for 3 days. During that time, we ran into each other a few times. Today, I waited for him at the pastry shop. But instead of Li Su, It was Chu Qing who arrived first. He frowned at my elaborate outfit and asked, "Why are you here?" "I should be asking you that," I replied calmly. "I've loved the chestnut cakes here since I was little. Isn't it perfectly normal for me to be here?" It was already strange enough to run into Chu Qing, but his reaction confused me even more. He didn't explain anything, just barked, "Go back." I ignored him. Chu Qing seemed to lose patience and reached out to grab me. As I tried to avoid him, I ended up bumping right into Li Su, who had just entered the shop. Our eyes met, and I caught the fleeting trace of surprise and admiration in his gaze. My sister and I shared some resemblance, about 50%. She was graceful and gentle, while I was lively and spirited. We were different, but equally beautiful in our own ways. Chu Qing once said that if Rongyin didn't exist, he might have liked me. I always thought that was laughable. Yes, I was partly to blame for my sister's death. But Chu Qing's betrayal, and his attempt to kill me, was real, too. One day, when I have power in my hands, I will make him suffer the pain I endured in my previous life. 03. How rude! A sharp voice snapped me out of my thoughts. One of the guards beside Li Su was staring at me warily. I quickly looked away, lowering my head in embarrassment, my face burning red. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Li Su lifted a hand and gave a faint smile. "It's all right." Then, with a sudden shift in tone, he asked, "Are you here for the pastries too, miss? Would you be kind enough to show me around?" I couldn't have wished for anything better. I immediately brightened up and smiled. "Then you've come to the right person. I probably know more about pastries than anyone else in Shengjing." With that, I led him inside, deliberately bumping my shoulder against Chu Qing, who was still standing in the same spot like a statue. In my past life, I once dreamed of sharing a loving and harmonious marriage with him. Now, no matter how I looked at him, he was nothing but an eyesore. When Li Su and I came out chatting and laughing, Chu Qing was still there. But I couldn't be bothered with him anymore. If I guessed right, he had been reborn too. He must have come here to stop my sister from meeting Li Su, only to find me instead. But if he loathed me as much as he used to, he should have walked away immediately.
So, why didn't he?
As Li Su and I were about to get into the same carriage, Chu Qing stepped forward and said to him, "Sir, I've been asked to bring this young lady, the second daughter of the Shin family, back home." At this point, Chu Qing hadn't entered government service yet, so Li Su didn't know who he was. But Chu Qing definitely recognized Li Su. He just didn't plan to reveal it. Unexpectedly, Li Su replied, "We're heading to the Shun residence right now. Why don't you join us?" Yes, just like in my previous life, Li Su claimed to be traveling in Shengjing, tired of inns, and asked if he could stay at our home for a few days. That time, my sister had agreed out of kindness. But she had no idea that her entire life would be ruined because of it. Chu Qing looked at me with a complicated expression but said nothing. As the curtain of the carriage was lowered, it began to roll forward. When we neared the Shun residence, we saw my sister from afar pacing anxiously at the gate, glancing around from time to time. As soon as she saw me step out of the carriage, she rushed over. "Where have you been?" she asked immediately. Before I could answer, Li Su lifted the curtain and stepped down. My sister's face instantly turned pale. A chill ran through me. She pulled me aside, her voice tinged with a hint of scolding. "Why didn't you stay in the house?" I blinked and replied, "I had a sudden craving. Oh, and I met someone else today who shares my weakness for sweets." I pulled Li Su forward and began the introduction. "This is my sister. She's engaged to the heir of the Marquis household, so Chu Qing came to fetch me on her behalf." I deliberately made their relationship clear, because I wasn't sure if Li Su would fall for her again. When I saw that he only glanced at her briefly before looking away, I finally felt a bit more at ease. Just as I was about to pull Li Su into the house, both my sister and Chu Qing spoke at the same time. "He can't stay at the Shun residence." 04. At that moment, I was almost certain my sister had been reborn as well. She was clearly trying to keep Li Su away to avoid repeating the same tragedy. Li Su looked at the two of them, completely baffled. That's when I asked, why not? Chu Qing looked grim, but still didn't dare show disrespect to Li Su. If it's just for lodging, he's welcome to stay at the Chu residence. I find your conversation quite enlightening, sir, and would like to seek your advice on a few matters. Li Su stared at me for a long moment before replying to Chu Qing. Then I'll take you up on your hospitality, Lord Chu. And just like that, Li Su left with Chu Qing for the marquis residence. After they were gone, my sister took my hand and said softly, "Let's go home." Suddenly, my eyes began to sting. In my past life, I never saw her again after she entered the palace. The next time I did, she was a bloodied corpse. She had no title of rank, no children. She must have been buried hastily, forgotten by all. It was father who pleaded with Li Su to bring her body back. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see her tragic death, and Chu Qing's face twisted with rage as he strangled me. A cold sweat broke out down my spine. I lunged forward and hugged my sister tightly. She was surprised but still raised her hand to gently pat my back. "Why are you acting like a child again?" I pouted. "Just let me hold you a little longer." Then, as if remembering something, I stepped back and asked, "Sister, do you like Chu Qing?" She froze for a moment, then put on a calm and indifferent expression. "Whether I like him or not doesn't matter. It's an arrangement made by the generation before us. How can it be changed so easily?" "But why do you ask, Rongxi?" I answered with great seriousness. "I just don't think Chu Qing deserves you. Some things won't change unless you try. What I'm saying is, why not take control of your own fate? If I've been given a second chance at life, only to follow the same path again, then I'd be handing my destiny back into someone else's hands. No, I refuse to wait quietly for death. I want power. I want the people who wronged us to pay." Still, I had no intention of telling my sister the truth. If she knew, she'd realize I also died because of her. That burden is heavy enough for one person. I won't let her carry it too. All I want is for her not to marry Chu Qing. But clearly, I was worrying too much. 05. Early the next morning, I went to the marquis residence to find Li Su. Before I could even step through the gate, I was stopped by Chu Qing. His face was dark as he asked coldly, "You're really that eager, aren't you?" I stared at him in disbelief for a moment before understanding what he meant. If it were my sister, I might still be afraid of exposing the truth. But with Chu Qing, that didn't apply. I let out a cold laugh, not even sparing him a glance. "If you already know how eager I am, then why don't you move?" Chu Qing was so furious he pointed at me and snapped, "Shameless." I didn't hold back. "Oh, so you do know what shame is? Then how could you touch the younger sister of your fiancé? Oh, wait. I was your wife once, wasn't I? The one you nearly killed with your bare hands." Chu Qing clenched and unclenched his fists, his expression twitching. In the end, he just let out a sigh. When he finally spoke again, his tone had lost its earlier bite. I didn't truly mean to kill you back then." I couldn't help but laugh. What did he think I was, a cat with 9 lives? All I felt was bitter irony. I quickly gathered my emotions, smiled faintly, and said, "Really? But I truly meant to kill you." Chu Qing looked up sharply, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. "Shun Rongxi." I ignored him. Li Su had just come out. He was dressed in a dark robe embroidered with golden silk and wore an elegant jade crown, exuding noble refinement. Next to Chu Qing, he was no less impressive, perhaps even more so. I gave him a well-timed smile. "Didn't we agree I'd take you to Zui Xianlu today for the full Manchu Han banquet?" Li Su raised an eyebrow playfully. "Then I'd be honored to accept." I added pointedly, "But you're footing the bill." "No problem." He agreed, without hesitation. For the next few days, I took him all over the city to try every kind of delicacy. Some were tucked away in narrow alleyways, but he showed no fear of danger and accepted every recommendation. Just like in the previous life, the day after he returned to the palace, an imperial edict was sent to the Shun residence. That was when my sister finally found out I had been spending all that time with Li Su. She was furious. You said you were at Xiao Xian workshop learning embroidery. You've even learned to lie to your sister? I bit my lip, guilty, not daring to argue. My sister had thought that keeping Li Su out of the house would be enough to avoid disaster. She never knew that not long after her death in the last life, I died too. And she never imagined I'd be reborn, deliberately drawing Li Su close this time. You can't go to the palace, she said firmly, like a final decree. Mother asked why, but my sister couldn't explain. She just held onto me tightly, unwilling to let go. But the truth was already in front of us. Refusing the edict would mean defying the emperor. The entire family would be executed. I gently grasped her hand and said, "Don't worry, sister. You know I've never been one to suffer losses. I always get even. I promise I'll take good care of myself in the palace. You really don't have to worry." My sister looked at me, her eyes full of reluctance. But she still managed to give me a few reminders. I've heard the noble consort has a bad temper. She often throws tantrums at His Majesty. But he's the emperor, no matter how much he dotes on her, he has his pride. So to punish her, he'll deliberately favor other beauties to make her jealous. In the end, she always gives in, but those other beauties end up as collateral damage. So that was what happened to my sister in the previous life. Still not reassured, she added, "Whatever happens, don't offend the noble consort. Keep a low profile. Staying alive is the most important thing." I nodded, then stepped into the carriage under the watchful eyes of my family. And I didn't miss the shadowy figure standing by the street. 06. Of course, Chu Qing had followed me. He slipped some silver to the palace eunuchs, and my carriage came to a stop by the side of the road. I lifted the curtain and looked at him. "If you have something to say, say it. I'm not getting out. A lady's reputation matters, especially when she's about to enter the palace to serve the emperor." "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Chu Qing asked, his voice filled with certainty. "What are you talking about?" I honestly wasn't pretending. I had no idea what he was trying to get at. In the past life, it was true that my sister was the one engaged to him. But once he married me, he had accepted that arrangement. Even if he loved my sister and never stepped foot in my courtyard, I could understand. But he knew full well my sister's entry into the palace wasn't my doing. Her death wasn't what I wanted either. And yet, Chu Qing had blamed everything on me. He claimed he didn't really want to kill me, but I still died. He said he loved my sister. And now, in this life, he kept chasing after me. Maybe even he didn't understand his own heart. Chu Qing stared into my eyes and said, "That day when you rode in the same carriage as Li Su, it didn't seem so concerned about your reputation then. It was wrong of me to neglect you before. But that doesn't mean you should risk your life just to spite me." "So what?" I replied. "You came all this way just to tell me that? You already knew there's no turning back, yet you still came. What? For peace of mind? To ease your guilt? Or did you suddenly realize the one you love might actually be me?" His eyes widened in shock. He stumbled back a few steps, clearly shaken. His face turned red, then white. It was quite the sight. "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. But his voice lacked any real anger. My eyes grew colder. At the same time, a new idea took root in my mind. I spoke carefully. "If you really want to do something for me, then join the court. Help me." I didn't look at him again. It sounded more like an offhand remark. But Chu Qing took it seriously. "What is it you want to do?" "Of course, I want to avenge my sister," I replied, throwing the question right back at him. "Don't you?" Chu Qing seemed to remember something and asked quietly, If I hadn't said it should have been you who died, would you still have chosen to enter the palace?" "Probably not." With that, I let the curtain fall. "Yes, I said it on purpose. Just to make him feel guilty." 07. The process of entering the palace didn't go smoothly. As soon as I set foot in the inner court, I was stopped. The one who blocked my path was none other than noble consort Suyu. She stood there with her chin held high, practically looking down at me as if I were dirt. Since when can just any stray cat or dog waltz into the palace? I bowed to her with proper courtesy before replying. Your Grace must be joking. Even if I were a stray cat or dog, I was summoned personally by His Majesty. The implication, she had no right to interfere. Suyu cast me a sideways glance and asked, What's your name? Your Grace, I am Shinrongshi. Raise your head. Just as I was about to lift it, I caught a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, a hand flying toward my face. Without thinking, I let myself fall backward, collapsing to the ground with one hand over my cheek, eyes brimming with tears. Why would Your Grace have someone strike me? The senior maid beside Suyu looked hesitant, clearly unsure how to respond. But Suyu herself didn't care in the slightest. The moment she saw my face, her fury had clouded her judgment. She snapped, Li Su, just you wait. With that, she stormed off, seething. I was taken to a rather elegant palace chamber. My sister had feared I wouldn't adjust to palace life, so she sent me her smartest maid. Jianyu, go ahead and tidy up. It wasn't hard to guess. Li Su must really favor Suyu. Otherwise, how could a single consort carry herself with such arrogance?
And me?
Most likely, I was just a tool he used to provoke her. This situation did not bode well for me. I needed to find a way to deepen Li Su's impression of me, preferably something I could use to control him. Jianyu soon had my bedchamber neatly arranged. I lay on the bed, tossing and turning, thinking of my next move. Just then, Jianyu rushed in and said, Second miss, there's talk all over the palace. This morning, the noble consort made a huge scene at Qinghe Hall. She embarrassed His Majesty in front of everyone. His Majesty was so furious, he lashed out at the servants. Several have already been flogged. Now, everyone's scared out of their minds. I thought for a moment, then quickly sat up. Jianyu, prepare some sweets. Without asking questions, Jianyu hurried off to make the arrangements. About half an hour later, Li Su did indeed arrive at Luyan Hall. As soon as he entered, he sniffed the air and asked, What's that smell? Take a guess. I brought over a plate of creamy snow pudding studded with dried fruit. Would Your Majesty like a taste? I'd once heard that sweets lift the spirit. Li Su was the emperor. He had absolute power. But even so, when his mood soured, he'd surely want somewhere to vent. The palace was full of women ready to comfort him. He just had to lift a finger. I remembered my sister's advice, so I made the preparations in advance. And just as I'd hoped, Li Su came. He accepted the plate and scooped a spoonful of the dessert into his mouth. I leaned forward eagerly. Well, it's sweet. Then, is Your Majesty feeling a little better? Li Su looked down at me, something flickering in his eyes, an emotion I couldn't quite read. Then he set down the jade plate and, without warning, wrapped an arm around my waist and swept me up, heading straight into the inner chamber. This was a scene I had imagined many times before, and yet I couldn't help feeling nervous now that it was real. Li Su laid me on the bed and was about to lean over me when the eunuch's voice came from outside the door. Your Majesty, a message from Qingfang Hall. The noble consort has suddenly fainted. Li Su didn't move. He merely gave a cold snort. She should have at least come up with a better excuse. With that, he leaned down again to kiss me. I tilted my head just in time to avoid him. Perhaps Your Majesty should go check on her. If anything truly happens to the noble consort, I wouldn't be able to bear the blame. Li Su looked displeased. And what does that have to do with you? How could it not? I'm of low rank. If word spreads that I was being so intimate with Your Majesty while she was ill, surely she wouldn't be pleased. When has she ever been pleased? Since the day I took the throne, she's made trouble every day. If not for the past we shared, I wouldn't even bother with her. Just a few words were enough to show. Li Su was still indulgent towards Suyu. Otherwise, why would he have watched her torment my sister in the last life without lifting a finger? Still, he was an emperor. If Suyu kept pushing her luck, she was bound to burn herself in the end. 08. In the end, Li Su didn't go any further. To break the awkwardness, I suddenly suggested, Your Majesty, shall I make you beggar's chicken? Beggar's chicken? What's that? So, I pulled him along to the imperial kitchen. The palace staff, seeing the emperor himself arrive, dared not say a word and simply let me do as I pleased. I busied myself for quite a while and finally prepared 2 steaming hot beggar's chickens. The fragrance made Li Su visibly hungry. I immediately tore off a drumstick and handed it to him. "Here, try it, Your Majesty." After tasting it, Li Su nodded repeatedly. It wasn't that my cooking was exceptionally good, it's just that anything tastes amazing when you're craving it.
Trust me, I know the feeling.
Just as we finished eating and were about to leave the kitchen, Suyu arrived with the help of a palace maid. Her face was deathly pale, and there seemed to be tears clinging to the corners of her eyes, but her lips were still pressed into a proud, tight line. Li Su took one look and said coldly, "Wandering around this late? Looks like you're not that sick after all." Suyu's chest heaved violently at his words, and then, to everyone's shock, she coughed up a mouthful of blood. Li Su panicked. His reaction was visible to the naked eye. He rushed forward without another word of reproach and caught her in his arms. "Summon the imperial physician." Quickly, he shouted in alarm. I, however, kept my eyes fixed on the bloodstain she had vomited onto the floor. To confirm my suspicion, I dipped my handkerchief into it and brought it to my nose. As I thought, blood peach. My voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for everyone in the room to hear. Li Su turned to Suyu, staring at her in disbelief. His expression gradually turned cold. "You really think I'm that easy to fool?" Suyu, caught red-handed, refused to back down. "And why wouldn't I? You've been ignoring me for them. Women in the palace I can tolerate, but now you're even bringing them in from outside. What happened to your promise? You said you'd only ever love me." Li Su let go of her and slowly stood up. "I am the emperor." With that, he turned and swept out of the room. Seeing the situation turn sour, I prepared to slip away too. But Suyu stopped me in my tracks. "Shunrongshi, is it?"
Fine.
"Very well." We were now officially enemies. But for the moment, Suyu had more pressing problems. Just last night, after leaving the kitchen, Li Su had gone to Lady Su's residence and spent the entire night with her. The very next day, she was promoted to noble lady. Yet not even half a month later, her corpse was found floating in Tay Lake. When I heard the news, I broke out in a cold sweat. Even Jian Yu couldn't hide her concern. They're saying noble consort Su was the first woman by His Majesty's side, and he's always treated her differently. There have been others who tried to rise, but none of them met a good end. Second miss, do you think we stand a chance? Why not?
I said.
If she truly meant that much to him, wouldn't she already be empress? That, I thought, was the root of Suyu's tantrums. But no matter how much of a fuss she kicked up, the Su family was still just a merchant clan. In a world that favored agriculture and looked down on commerce, a consort was already their ceiling. Just then, I received news that Chu Qing had taken up a post in court. His father was a marquis. It wasn't hard for him to be appointed to an official position. I decided I should go see him.
09.
I waited by the path where court officials passed after morning assembly. After exchanging a few words with my father and confirming all was well at home, I turned my eyes toward Chu Qing in the distance. Noticing this, father quietly took his leave. It had been a while since I last saw Chu Qing. He looked noticeably thinner. Before I could speak, he handed me a small lacquered box. I didn't take it. "What is it?" "Chestnut cakes," he replied. When I didn't react, he added, "You once said you liked them. That's all. Also, I heard what happened with noble Lady Su. Be careful." I lowered my eyes and took the box, then asked softly, "Will you marry my sister?" To my surprise, he asked back, "Do you want me to?" I looked up sharply. "Chu Qing, do you even know what you're saying?" "Then what do you mean by asking that?" I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to hide it anymore. "Because I need the support of the Marquis household." "So, you want me to marry her?"
No.
"I want the engagement to remain, but I don't want you to actually marry her." A man like him, who wavered between two women, wasn't worthy of my gentle, dignified sister. Chu Qing seemed to understand. Shinrongshi, are you trying to use me? And what? Would you rather see me end up like noble Lady Sue? No. Chu Qing shook his head. A flicker of pain crossed his face. You chose to join the court early. That was your decision, wasn't it? With that, I turned and walked away without looking back. After living through 2 lifetimes, I'd come to understand one thing. People always crave what they can't have. What's within reach, they often take for granted. When I returned to Luyan Hall, I found Li Su waiting for me. Seeing the box in my hands, he asked, "What's that?" "Chestnut cakes." "From where?" "My sister had Chu Qing send them." Li Su's brow furrowed at that. Pretending not to notice, I opened the box and took out a piece. "Want a bite?" When he didn't respond, I popped one into my own mouth. Li Su looked displeased. "You." Whatever he was about to say, I interrupted by stuffing another piece into his mouth. "I thought maybe your majesty was afraid it was poisoned, so I tasted it first." Only then did Li Su eat the chestnut cake, without complaint. To be honest, when we set aside our statuses, Li Su and I actually had quite a bit in common. He must have sensed the same, because he suddenly said, "I'll grant you the title of Wani. From now on, whenever you have time, bring me some snacks." I didn't even hesitate. I dropped to my knees to thank him. You have to understand, my father had served in the bureaucracy for years and only made it to the 5th rank. Yet with just a few words, Li Su could change my entire fate. And deep within me, the seeds of ambition had already begun to grow.
10.
News that I had been granted the title, 1E, quickly spread throughout the entire harem. That day, I had just made some candied hawthorn skewers for Li Su, but before I could reach Qinghe Hall, Siyu intercepted me. She strutted over arrogantly, chin high, and demanded, "Hand over the food." My first instinct was to suspect a setup. I had made the food myself. If anything happened to the emperor after eating it, I'd be the one to take the fall. Seeing me hesitate, Siyu motioned to her maids, ready to have them snatch it by force. I took a few steps back and asked, "Your Grace, do you truly love His Majesty?" Siyu froze. "What are you trying to say?" I kept my tone calm and steady. "If noble consort truly loves His Majesty, why not cook for him yourself? Why take what others have made? Surely your Grace knows. Even though the emperor is ruler of a nation, he has a terrible sweet tooth. You've been by his side for years, yet you've never made anything for him. What you really care about, perhaps only you yourself know best." I was hinting, of course, that she didn't love Li Su. She just wanted to be empress. Siyu was instantly enraged. She lunged forward and grabbed for my hair. "You little wench. Who are you to judge me? I'll beat you to death today." I shielded the food box and let her strike me. Pain stung across my scalp and face, but I clenched my teeth and endured it. Soon enough, someone grabbed her wrist. "If you keep this up, don't blame me for being merciless." It was Li Su. I exchanged a brief glance with Jianyu, who stood behind him. I had seen Siyu heading my way from afar and sent Jianyu ahead to inform the emperor. As for how much of what I said he had overheard, who knew? Siyu trembled with rage at being protected, again, by Li Su. "Li Su, you'll regret this." She was probably the only one in the entire palace who dared call the emperor by his name. It was said the two had known each other since his days as a prince. He used to spoil her, refusing to take any other consorts for years, all for her. But things were different now. A prince might lavish love on one woman. An emperor could not. The imperial court was a web of tangled interests. Even the emperor's every word and action had to be carefully calculated. There was no way he could keep being led around by a single woman. As for me, I only needed to stay just safe enough while constantly provoking her. After Suyu stormed off, I casually tidied my hair as if nothing had happened and handed the food box to Li Su. "I promised you candied hawthorns yesterday." Li Su didn't take it immediately. He just stared at me, and in his eyes, I saw a flicker of empathy. We stood like that, gazing at each other in silence. I wondered, was he actually moved even a little? On one side, the woman he once loved but who had grown ugly in his eyes. On the other, someone who perhaps understood him just a little. But he was an emperor, after all. In the end, his heart would tilt toward whatever served him best. After a long pause, Li Su took a skewer from the box and held it to my lips. You once said sweet things can cheer a person up. I didn't care how disheveled I looked. I opened my mouth and took a bite. Sweet with a bit of sour. Let me try. Li Su bit into the same skewer I had just tasted. The sourness made his face scrunch up. I wanted to laugh, but the motion tugged at the wounds on my face, making me wince in pain. Li Su summoned the imperial physician, who prescribed me some medicine. By the time I returned to Luyan Hall, the sun was already setting. I had just laid down to rest when Jian Yu burst in, face full of excitement. Second miss, good news? I perked up instantly. Tell me. Recently it's been raining non-stop along the Huai River. His Majesty was beside himself with worry. The young Marquis, Lord Chu, and Master volunteered to go handle the flooding. Not only did they evacuate everyone in time, but they also successfully diverted the waters, saving the villages from disaster. His Majesty is about to bestow rewards. Master hasn't been promoted in years. This time, it should be a sure thing. That was good news. Even if Suyu caused trouble again, I'd have a bit more leverage now. 11. With my father's accomplishment, Li Su finally decided to summon me to his bed. I was being carried into Qinghe Hall when I crossed paths with Chu Qing coming out. The moment he saw me, he froze, as if struck by lightning. I looked at him calmly. Not until a nearby servant whispered a reminder did Chu Qing awkwardly avert his eyes. I sneered inwardly. What was the point of acting so shaken now? Soon after, I was brought into Li Su's bedchamber. I lay on the bed, bored out of my mind, waiting. By the time Li Su arrived, I was nearly asleep. Everything that followed happened naturally. Li Su wasn't a rough man, but it was still unpleasant for me. When I returned to Luyan Hall and was about to bathe, Jian Yu came in, flustered. Su Yu is on her way here with a crowd of people. Clearly, she'd heard I had spent the night with the emperor and couldn't hold it in anymore. I casually threw on a cloak and said to Jian Yu, "Get ready, we have a guest." Outside Luyan Hall, two groups faced off in tense silence. Su Yu's gaze was full of venom. Before she could speak, I seized the chance to strike first. Is your grace planning to kill and silence me? Then I suddenly shifted my tone. But are you sure I am your enemy? If you kill me today, there'll be another beauty tomorrow. If I'm not mistaken, the Prime Minister's daughter is coming of age soon. Surely she'll enter the palace someday, too. Does your grace plan to eliminate every woman in the harem? If His Majesty remains childless, even you will be punished. A flicker of hesitation flashed across Su Yu's face before she snapped bitterly. You wouldn't understand. He used to promise me over and over, said he'd love only me in this life. But ever since he ascended the throne, everything changed. He started looking down on my family for lacking noble blood, started blaming me for not giving him a child. Do you think I didn't try? I drank all sorts of bitter tonics for his sake, and now he calls me willful, says I'm difficult. But wasn't it this bold, passionate side of me he used to love most? Everyone has their own kind of charm in their own way. But no matter what, hurting others is still wrong. She was hurt and heartbroken, but others paid for it with their lives. I looked at her steadily as she teetered on the edge of a breakdown and said, but he's the emperor now. He's no longer the prince who could indulge you in everything. Su Yu was pulled into my words, murmuring, yes, it's the throne's fault. My heart jumped. I immediately warned her. Your Grace, please be careful what you say. His Majesty has his own burdens, too. Su Yu glanced at me in disdain and scoffed. Enjoy it while you can. I sighed. Did she really think I was enjoying any of this? I understood now. Su Yu had survived in the palace this long purely because Li Su had always protected her.
12.
Recently, heavy rains had caused floods in the Huai River region. Though the disaster had been resolved properly, a new problem emerged. Droughts began sweeping across the southwest, leaving the people in misery. Li Su decided to visit Chanfu Temple in 3 days to pray for blessings on behalf of the people. What I didn't expect was for him to bring me along. After our last night together, he promoted me to the rank of Zhao Yi. Though technically I didn't qualify, with the empress seat still vacant, no one dared raise objections. But Jianyu later told me what she'd heard. Li Su had originally intended for Suyu to accompany him, but she had claimed poor health and declined. That's the only reason the opportunity fell to me. Ordinarily, Suyu would never pass up such a chance. So why this time? I didn't have to wait long to find out. On the day of the prayer ceremony, to my surprise, Chu Qing was among the attendants. After offering incense to the gods with Li Su, I retreated to the rear courtyard to rest. That was when Li Su suddenly vanished. The guards panicked the moment they discovered the emperor was missing. His Majesty's outings were always carried out with the utmost caution. The entourage was large, and the temple had been sealed off early that morning. It wasn't an exaggeration to say even a mosquito would have trouble sneaking in. So, who could have possibly abducted the emperor? Any mishap with the emperor would make every attending official that day culpable. That was when Chu Qing approached me. He hadn't even spoken yet, but I already knew what he wanted to ask. So I offered my suspicion outright. I think the noble consort is behind this. Chu Qing frowned. Why would you say that? Think about it. With such a massive security operation, who would dare risk their life to kidnap the emperor, unless someone was part of the entourage from the beginning? Then what does noble consort hope to gain from this? That was something only Suyu herself could answer. After hearing my reasoning, Chu Qing immediately ordered the search area expanded. In less than an hour, they found Li Su unconscious behind the mountain, with Suyu lying nearby in a eunuch's robe. Fortunately, the imperial physician had accompanied us. Li Su soon woke up, but he was clearly enraged. His sharp gaze pinned Suyu like a blade. What exactly were you trying to do? Suyu glanced around but seemed unaware of how serious the situation was. She gritted her teeth and blurted out her true feelings. I just wanted you to belong to me alone. The elder officials behind us instantly erupted, their beards trembling with fury. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. If anything had happened to the emperor today, the entire empire would have descended into chaos. The noble consort's actions today show blatant disregard for the imperial authority. This is anarchy. To openly kidnap the emperor and drug him, this is treason. Your Majesty cannot allow someone like her to remain at your side.
Suyu began to panic.
I didn't mean to hurt His Majesty. I just. Then her gaze suddenly snapped to me. It was her. It was consort Zhao Yi Shenrongshi. She incited me to do it. It was all her idea. At that, everyone turned to look at me. But I remained perfectly calm and met Suyu's gaze head-on. Your Grace has never liked me, but that doesn't mean you can slander me without evidence. I am His Majesty's consort. Naturally, I wish him well. If I truly did urge you to kidnap him, what would I possibly gain from it? Suyu's arrogance and tyranny were well known throughout the palace. Her many attempts to make things difficult for me had not gone unnoticed. Besides, I had always remained by Li Su's side, preparing countless dishes for him with my own hands. Everyone had seen that. No one believed her. In fact, after I finished speaking, several ministers even nodded in approval. It wasn't that I spoke particularly well, but compared to Suyu, everyone preferred a woman who knew her place and limits to serve the emperor. Under their pressure, Li Su couldn't bring himself to execute Suyu. Instead, he demoted her and banished her to the cold palace. No one expected what came next. Suyu took her own life. That night, Li Su was staying in my Luyan hall. Upon receiving the news, he didn't even bother to get dressed. He rushed straight to the cold palace. When I arrived, I saw Li Su holding Suyu's body, eyes empty and hollow. I walked up, draped a cloak over his shoulders, and softly said, "Your Majesty, please accept my condolences." He didn't look at me. "Go back," he said simply. Honestly, I hadn't wanted to come. But appearances still had to be maintained. Suyu had truly lived a life of defiant indulgence. She couldn't bear to lose, and in the end, chose to end things her own way. But what she cared about most was never something I had any interest in. After her death, Li Su fell ill for several days. She had been someone he once treasured dearly, after all. I stayed by his side every day, watching him grieve, regret, and despair. During that time, I handled many court matters in his stead. Gradually, Li Su grew increasingly dependent on me. 13. Spring arrived with the new year, and that was when my elder sister fled her arranged marriage. My father came to find me, worry etched across his brows. Romine has always been obedient and sensible. I never imagined she'd do something so outrageous. I, however, felt a weight lifted from my chest. At last, I could breathe freely. This isn't outrageous, it's a good thing. Father looked at me, bewildered. What do you mean? Is Chu Qing not good enough for her? I nodded. In some ways, yes, he's not. Father sighed. If even you say so, then let her be. But someone still has to give the Chu family an explanation. I'll speak to Chu Qing myself. Given my current position, the Chu family would have to show some respect. But before I even saw Chu Qing, I suddenly felt dizzy and nearly collapsed. Jian, you caught me just in time. Second miss, are you feeling unwell? I closed my eyes, took a few deep breaths, and finally felt a little better. Maybe we should go back. Has Chu Qing gotten so high up in office that he's too important to meet us now? Jianyu had heard about Romine's elopement and assumed Chu Qing had wronged her. Naturally, she had a low opinion of him. I shook my head, about to speak, when I saw Chu Qing walking toward us. Noticing my pale face, his expression tensed. What's wrong? I replied calmly, nothing. I've just been a little too tired lately. He asked again, did you come because of Shun Romine? I nodded. I want you to annul your engagement to her. Chu Qing stared at me, something bitter flickering in his eyes. So this is how it is, Shun Rongxi? Use me and then toss me aside. What else did you expect? Or were you planning to keep dragging my sister down with you? Chu Qing opened his mouth but found himself speechless. After a long pause, he finally relented. Don't worry. There will be no more marriage ties between the Chu and Shin families.
14.
I thought I had fallen ill, but to my surprise, I was pregnant. When Li Su heard the news, he was genuinely pleased. All these years, because of Su Yu, Li Su had never had an heir. In the royal family, nothing is more important than this. Su Yu's death had left him grieving, but perhaps it was also a kind of release. After that, endless rewards flowed into Luyan Hall. I was promoted from Zhao Yi to consort Shi. Even with the pregnancy, I still made little treats for Li Su every few days. Time passed in a blur. 5 years went by. Our children, a boy and a girl, had already started learning how to read and write. But Li Su's health grew worse by the day. Every year on the anniversary of Su Yu's death, he would spend a night in the cold palace and drink himself into oblivion. I never asked questions, never pried. I simply fulfilled my duties quietly. Aside from me, Li Su rarely showed favor to any other concubine. The previous year, the prime minister had intended to send his daughter into the palace. But upon seeing how weak Li Su had become, he quickly abandoned the idea. That same winter, when Li Su was on his deathbed, he summoned me and the children to his side. His voice was faint, barely more than a whisper. Rongxi, all these years, everything you've done, I've seen it. You've touched me deeply. But I also owe you an apology.
We met toe later.
I couldn't give you my heart, so let me give our child the throne instead. I clutched his hand tightly, as though afraid he'd slip away. Inside, though, I was quietly overjoyed. Between love and power, I still preferred power. If I hadn't fed him food that subtly clashed with his constitution over the years, perhaps he wouldn't have died so soon. With tears in my eyes and a sincere tone, I said, Your Majesty, I understand. I truly do. Li Su gave a faint smile. From here on, you'll have to walk the road alone. With that, he breathed his last. I held our 2 children and wept uncontrollably. Even the attending ministers were moved by the sight. After Li Su was buried, as stated in his will, the officials declared the young prince as the new emperor, and I became the empress dowager who ruled behind the curtain. Chu Qing became the regent prince. Though it was by my suggestion, it was mostly by his own efforts that he climbed his way to that position. Still, if someone else were sitting in that seat, I wouldn't feel as at ease. With the emperor still a child, the matters of court fell to me and Chu Qing to manage. That night, after the young emperor was carried away by the attendants, only Chu Qing and I remained in the palace hall. I couldn't help stretching and muttering, "These memorials, why do they never end?" Chu Qing looked up and smiled. "If you're tired, go rest. Leave the rest to me." I nodded, dropped my brush, and leaned against the table. Unexpectedly, I dozed off right there. I don't know how long I slept, but at some point, I felt someone lifting me. Startled, I opened my eyes, only to see Chu Qing holding me in his arms. "Put me down right now," I barked. He looked at me, eyes full of warmth. "What are you afraid of? Everyone in the palace is on our side now." His brazen attitude annoyed me, but I didn't plan to fall out with him. Instead, I chuckled and asked, "What, tired of being regent prince already? Want to be this widow's boy toy now?" At that, Chu Qing flushed with panic. "Shunrongshi, I just wanted to carry you to bed, so you'd be more comfortable." "Oh, I must have misunderstood you then." He put me down quickly, ears burning red, and mumbled, "Eat more these days." I'll be going now." After he left, the hall grew quiet again. I rubbed my temples and let out a long sigh. Suddenly, I found myself missing my elder sister. I wondered where she ended up after fleeing her marriage, and what interesting adventures she must have had. 15. The peaceful days didn't last long. Only half a year after the young emperor's ascension, war broke out on the border. The Turkic tribes had invaded from the north, breaching 3 of our cities in a row. At such a critical time, the court desperately needed a commander who could rally the troops. I thought of Chu Qing. Back in the day, the heir to the Marquis household had been a rare talent, both scholarly and martial. When I told him of my idea, he lowered his head and gave a bitter smile. "You're still holding on to those old grudges, aren't you?" I didn't answer. His eyes reddened instantly. "Shinrongshi, you're truly heartless. Have you even thought this through?" The court's barely stabilized. "If I leave, how are you and the young emperor going to hold things together?" Of course I had thought about it. My father held influence at court, and with Chu Qing guarding the borders, no one would dare touch us. And if I refused to go? "It's an imperial decree." Chu Qing laughed bitterly, then began to cry. "Then your humble servant obeys." Chu Qing was gone for 2 years. The day news of victory reached Xinjiang, snowflakes were drifting down from the sky. Chu Qing had led 300,000 troops against the Turkic invaders and fought dozens of fierce battles. The Turkic people were known for their brutality and thirst for war. After we lost 5 cities in succession, Chu Qing finally found a way to break through. Leading a select group of elite soldiers, he launched a surprise attack from the rear and successfully beheaded the enemy leader. Our army's morale soared. With renewed strength, they crushed the enemy, scattering them in all directions. Tragically, Chu Qing sustained fatal injuries during that final assault and passed away 3 months ago. But this campaign sent a clear message to the world. Our nation was strong, and not to be provoked. Thus, peace was restored. When the emperor turned 11, I boarded a finely adorned carriage and left the palace, heading south.
16.
Jiangnan, it's the place everyone longs for. The breeze here is soft. Gray tiles and white walls, little bridges over flowing streams. Every corner is steeped in elegance. Among them stood a pastry shop called Nianxi, where a long line had already formed outside early in the morning. Peering out from the carriage, I saw Jianyu running back toward me, her face glowing with excitement. "Second, miss, it's done." With the help of a shop attendant, I was finally reunited with my elder sister, whom I hadn't seen in many years. But before I could say anything, my vision was blurred by tears. I threw my arms around her and wept uncontrollably. She gently patted my back, again and again. If the news I heard is correct, you're the Empress Dowager now. If people saw this, they'd laugh at you. Sniffling, I replied, "Humph, let them laugh. I don't care." Once I'd cried enough, I pulled her close and said, "Ah, Jia, I've missed you so much. There were too many things to deal with before. I couldn't leave. But now the little rascal can handle court affairs himself, and with father still at court, I finally had the chance to come see you. You haven't changed at all. You're even prettier than before. Oh, right. Jia, did you ever find a husband?" She smiled gently at me and replied, "No, and I don't intend to. I've made plenty of silver and bought myself a house. I have nothing to worry about for the rest of my life. Why would I want a man to come spend my money?" I clung to her arm and swayed it back and forth. "Then will Jia let me spend your silver?" With a look full of indulgence, she answered, "Of course. We're family, aren't we?" "Yes. We are the closest family in the world." From then on, every year I would go stay with my elder sister for a while. At night, we'd sleep in the same bed. She told me amusing stories from the common folk. I shared with her the schemes and intrigue from the imperial court. We never tired of it. Even before parting, we'd already start planning our next reunion. Later, when father and mother passed away one after another, my elder sister returned to Xinjiang with me to see to their funerals. Then she said she'd never go back to the capital again. After that, I grew older and older. Eventually, I wrote a letter to the emperor telling him I wouldn't return. I planned to retire in Jiangnan. He and his sister came all the way south to invite me back, or so they claimed, but in truth they just wanted to see for themselves what made this place so captivating. And after that visit, they never tried to bring me back again. Instead, they came to stay with me every summer. In our courtyard, there was a flowering crabapple tree. Every year when it bloomed, I loved to sit beneath it. That day, I leaned back in my chair, my eyelids growing heavier and heavier. The wind stirred a flurry of petals across the ground. Surrounded by their faint fragrance, I slowly closed my eyes. Jia, in this life, Rongxi is going on ahead. The end.